everybody, John here, and today onto the garage. We are going to change the lower ball joint on Steed the XK8. Well, as today's today, we discovered just how difficult it is to remove a ball joint from the lower arm of a Jaguar XK8. It's a job that's avoided by an awful lot of XK8, XKR, X100 owners because the shape of this arm is not conducive to easy holding, pressing, etc. So rather than replace that ball joint, they replace the entire arm. So either the piece I'm holding onto now, or sometimes the entire wishbone assembly. But that's rather expensive, so we are going to change just this part, and we're going to work out how to do it so that you guys can follow the same instruction if you've got a press or maybe even just a strong voice. So I don't have a deluxe workshop, I don't work in a garage, but I do have a few nice toys. One of the nice toys I've got is a 10-ton press. It's not an expensive thing. UK folk will recognise Clark as being an inexpensive brand. This was purchased from Machine Mart years ago. It didn't cost the earth, and if you are going to do quite a lot of suspension work, I would suggest it's a really good investment. Over the years I've collected all sorts of bits and pieces that makes this more useful. So I've got all sorts of big discs and plugs for pushing. I've got various puller plates. These lin bins are full of useful things that I've collected over the years, and indeed recently, those who watch the channel, I used an old damper bottom bush to make a drift for pushing out damper bottom bushes. So you build a collection and it all helps. I've also got some big heavy blocks to use as anvils. I've got various blocks of wood that I use, and underneath I keep all of my similar tools, so spring compressors, pullers, ball joint splitters, bits and pieces that are associated. And finally, in that big red case, I've got a big selection of heavy tubes, stops. It's a puller kit basically. So between them and my press, I should be able to do more or less all the jobs that I ever come across. Now I'm going to want to push that ball joint and the torn bush in the end of this out, but I'm going to concentrate on the difficult one first that everybody seems to have problems with. Let's get a new one. I'm lucky I've got one here that I can look at. So this is a ball joint without its boot. It's not the one I'm going to fit, but it's exactly the same shape, and it can be very hard sometimes to understand what's bush, what's bracket. So having one out like this makes it a lot easier to see. So this flange here is part of the ball joint, and again that's where people start to go wrong. They push on that maybe thinking it's part of the casting, and it's not. So we're going to have to rest on the thin ledge outside of that flange, and on the other side we've got that to push on. So we're going to want to push inside this ring. So tops, this is not going to be a problem, and the crazy angles and shape of it, not going to be too much of a problem for pushing out, in my opinion. We just load the whole thing up, hold it flat, and once it's clamped, away we go. So I think the first mission is find out if we've got a tube that is just the right size to miss that flange and touch the surrounding arm. So let's have a look what size tubes I've got. So we know we want it to be bigger than that flange. Okay, that's bigger. Have we got something a bit closer? Yes, we have. That's not bad. This is big enough for that flange to go through. So that's what we could rest our arm on. That's good. That's going to be excellent, in fact. Next, we need something that can push on this area. If you push just in the middle, there's a chance you bulge or distort this, because remember, this is hollow. But if you push on the edges, there's a wall below it. And I've found this metal bung, it's a nut actually, from my collection. And that fits on there, and it is just a little bit smaller than the outside diameter of that bit there. So, a couple of heavy metal plates. We've got the ring. We can sit on there. We can push using this, but I'll introduce a block of wood. And we're looking good. So it's a hand cranked press using a bottle jack to power it. Nothing clever or sophisticated. But again, for the home hobbyist rather than using it all day, every day. Next thing, we're going to push this through, and at the moment, it's going to push through onto the wood. So that's going to foul, so no use to us. I'm just going to pop a hole in the middle of this. It's a 32. Now another option would have been to make this thicker by doing that, but because this is a bit of an unwieldy piece and I'm going to be hand supporting it, I didn't want to knock them over and have any health and safety incidents, so this is actually more appropriate. Okay, that's the end of my travel. Let's just have a look. Yeah, I can drop through there easy enough. That's what I'm thinking of using to push down. So we're not going to be able to push down quite deep enough with that. So we'll switch over to every press fan's friend, impact sockets. Very strong, and you've typically got a set of them in a variety of diameters. So remember, the important bit is that I sit on this, and we've only got that little bit of land there, a little bit on the far side, and we don't sit on the metal flange of the bush because you'll never push it out. And this tube gives me a pretty good register, such that we're not going to touch anything we don't want to. Let's put our socket on top. There we go. And we're clamped. Obviously be a bit lighter and easier to manoeuvre without the arms on. So if you disassemble this, it'd be just a little bit easier on yourself. Let's see how we get on with the 10-ton press. I have got my safety glasses on, just out of shot. That's just because sometimes things get spat from presses. It could be metal, could be hydraulic oil. Okay, so we're applying a lot of pressure there. and nothing's moving. So now what we're going to do is tap the casting to see if we can get it to let go a bit. And the acid test is when you apply pressure, is there any slack? It did move a little, not much. That may have been seating down more onto the tube. It may have been the wood crushing below it. We don't know. But we go again. And she's out. So, that was quite exciting. Let's apply a bit more pressure in case it's stuck a bit further down. Yeah, it had. So we're now pushing it out the rest of the way. And there we are. So, there's the eye where it's come out of. And there's the ball joint. So, eminently doable to remove a lower ball joint from one of these arms. You don't have to buy one for that reason. Can we get one back in? That's the next one. So for those playing along at home, to push the ball joint out, I used a tube or pocket or nest, depending on your preference for languages, with an inside diameter of 57 millimeters as the support for pushing it out. And the drift I pushed it out with was 34 millimeters in diameter. Now I'm going to push out the damaged front bush. Okay, to get this bush out, we're going to have to try a totally different approach. And the problem is we need to push it through from this side. So we can obviously put a circular bung in there to push on the metal that is the sleeve of the bush. Here's a new bush. But there's nothing to hold this from slipping down because there's a huge flange and it's wider than the forging. So there's nothing to hold it up other than you could hook a rod through that corner there. Not ideal because you'd be flexing things. So our totally different approach is we need to create some land by bending over this flange or breaking off so that we can get at something to support on this face. Probably make more sense as I get on with it. There's also an outside chance that this will remove the bush or at least loosen it. So cold chisel, heavy hammer, and hang on to your hammer. It's certainly bending. Starting to open up a gap there. I don't think it's drawing it down. I think it is just bending the flange. But if I bend it enough, I can cut off parts of that flange and create the land that I need. Land just being the expression for the area which you use to resist the press's force. So now we've managed to distort that flange sufficiently. What I'm going to do is use the 1mm cutting blade on the angle grinder, metal cutting blade. I'm going to do a slice across in those planes. Be careful with the cutting blade going through the rubber. It can snag and catch and kick back at you. And obviously you're trying not to cut into the eye. It's inevitable you'll touch it, but you do not want to be cutting into the eye. Safety glasses on, obviously. There's a bit of an exploratory cut and see how we get on. Superb. So if I can repeat the exercise here and here, I should be able to hammer this easier now. There's less material to bend up some more. I'll be able to push against this surface. Come back to you in a minute when I'm not making sparks to ruin my camera. There, you know it's a fresh picture when it's still smoking. Whoa! Very happy. What I'm thinking of doing now is drilling through the rubber, making a void all the way through, and then collapsing the sleeve into it to shrink it and relieve it, get it out. Getting it in will not be a problem. Again, just so that you guys know I'm not doing this for no reason. You see that? I haven't done that, but I am about to destroy it, so the fact that it's weakened somewhat will help me. Right, I've massively weakened it, so let's see what I can do. Yes! Finally! It's quite explosive when it goes, isn't it? Way in here. Here's the bush. Well, what's left of it. So I've dressed it all up. It's actually nicer forging now than it ever was new. I think I'll pull the bush back in on the bench. So it comes in from this side. I found a tube that will just kiss the edge of this flange without mauling the rubber too much. There we go. So I'm going to use that to push it in. There we go. Let's see if we can wind that nicely in. hard work. This one's absolutely fine. I think this one was torn because it had been tightened up before the weight was put on a suspension and tore it out. Okay, so we're going to insert this ball joint, and this is my rig that I've just lashed together, which I think is the way forward. I'll show you how it's made if it works. If not, we shall never speak of it again. But yeah, locating on this surface is very, very difficult. It is such a lot of shapes. Nothing is square to the plane, but this is going through except the back face, where our seat of our ball joint is going to go. And of course, if you do make up a jig that's full form nest for this, then you need a right and a left hand, and they will be completely bespoke to the XK8. So what I've devised is, I recognise that this circle is the only location, but if you occupy that circle with something to locate it, then obviously you can't push the ball joint in. So this is a sprung loaded bung. The G-clamp that you can see over here is just a rest, which I've arranged at a right-ish height. So I'm not expending too much effort in holding this thing up. That's about square. I know it doesn't look it. And we have got point contact with this tube underneath this. So you have got to hold it, but we're resting on this, we're resting on that, and I'm holding this end. So we can put our ball joint in there. I've sprayed a little bit of grease in there. The flange around the outside of the boot is what we have to push against. So let's see how we get on. Nope. It's just kicking over. No. Just moving us away far too easily. So the only way that this is going to work if all of this is pinned down. Before I get completely carried away with making jigs and fixtures for inserting this ball joint, all I've done is I've put a nest in the vise, meaning that the ball joint is in the correct position and only sitting on the metal shoulder. We've got our lower arm, which needs to be positioned on that like that. And what we're going to try is just heating the eye with a blow lamp, then dropping it over like that and hitting it. Because if that's all it takes, then we'd be wasting a lot of time and effort on doing anything more sophisticated than that. Okay, it's well warmed up, but not glowing. We're going to offer that onto the ball joint. Well, all I can say is we got it started. Okay, so that didn't work, but we've tried it out. We know we can sit this down on a tube in the press. That's not a problem. It's pushing down on this face that's the problem. We're going to use the old ball joint that sits really nicely in there, like so. We're going to slice off the actual pivotable bit. Next we'll just clean this up. Ball joint is obviously partly pressed in. This is the loose item. What I'm going to do is I'm going to weld to the underside of that flange nuts, which will in effect make this 3-point contact or more with this, and should enable me to get an even press. Okay, so we'll have another go. So that's my push out tool. 2 nuts welded to the side of the base of the old unit. So that's going to go in there like so. That's going on okay. That feels good. That's a good sound, unless one of the nuts is just broken, but I don't think they have. Yeah, that's good. That's jumped on. And again. Probably one more jump will do it. A little more. Okay. I don't really want to apply any more pressure than that. So we're going to let that back up. And we'll have a little look. Now it's distorted that, which I'm fine with. Not bad. And I don't know if you can see, but the base of this is touching the top of that. So might need another little push to bring that home. See if we can get this to come out. Yeah, no problem. But that is just kissing this. Probably 0.5 millimetre, if that, shorter would be ideal on this. But that has worked, it's pushed it home. And if you can see, there's a very small gap around the flange. You know, you could get a slice of paper through there. So I'm going to dress that face on this so we just get that little bit more depth. So that's all cleaned up, looking pretty. And now when you pop it in there, you can clearly see we've got good clearance between the end of my pusher and the back. There we go. And the back of the ball joint. So that was in fact the answer to the question, how do you install ball joints in XK8 lower arms at home, one of those and a press. Well, I'm going to leave this one here because I've got to pop out for a little while, and 3 inventions in one day, and the third one was the one that did the trick, and it was the simplest of the lot. Yes, you need a welder to make it, but not very difficult. Even if you've never welded before, if you can borrow somebody's welder, you'd make that really quickly. So I hope that's helped a few people out. I'm off to do something different. See you all soon, and we'll carry on getting Steed back on the road. Yay! If you just go to amazon.co.uk/shop/to the garage, and I'll put that link in the description below, it takes you to a to the garage area of Amazon that is categorized into hand tools, power tools, gadgets and gizmos, things specifically the XK8, etc. that I've bought from Amazon over the years, so that you can follow the same links and have a look, see how much those cost at the moment. Nice little feature. Thank you, Amazon.